The Drowned Road. My name is Eliza, and I used to think I was immune to fear. I was a search and rescue diver, trained to navigate through twisted metal, black water, and panic. I thought I'd seen the worst of what nature and people could do. I was wrong. It started with a call about a missing boy, 16, last seen riding his dirt bike near an old service road that cut through the hills. Locals called it Milner's Run, but on official maps it wasn't listed at all. I'd never heard of it. The sheriff's deputy who briefed us just muttered, "We try not to send people out there unless we have to." That should have been my first warning. The road was washed out years ago when a dam project went sideways. Half of it ended up underwater, along with a bridge and part of the old forest. But the asphalt still jutted out into what's now a small lake, Glass Hollow. Calm, silent, shallow in the center, and lined with drowned trees that rot where they stand. The boy's bike was found near the edge. We went in that morning. I remember the light, gray, washed out with the sun stuck behind clouds like it was too afraid to look down. The water was murky, but still, like something holding its breath. My dive partner, Sean, and I suited up and dropped below the surface. Right away, it felt wrong. Not just the cold or the visibility, it was something else, a sense that the water was watching us. Not metaphorically, I mean it. I've never felt that before or since. We followed what was left of the roadbed under the water. Bits of rusted guardrail still clung to the edges like broken teeth. Eventually, we saw the bridge. It lay there, cracked and moss-covered like a sleeping corpse. Half of it had crumbled into the lake bed, but the arch was still intact. You could make out carvings on the stonework, weathered initials, crude drawings, things kids might etch with a pocket knife. We swept our flashlights around, searching for any sign of the boy. And that's when we saw her. A figure, standing on the submerged bridge. She was pale, with long dark hair that floated like kelp in the current. She wore what looked like an old-fashioned dress, the kind you'd see in grainy black and white photos. Her eyes were wide, mouth slightly open, as if about to speak. But no bubbles rose, no movement. Sean and I froze. He shined his light directly on her and she vanished, just like that. No trail of bubbles, no movement through the silt. Gone. We surfaced fast. My lungs were burning, heart thudding so hard I thought I might black out. Sean ripped off his mask and said, "Did you see that?" I nodded, but no one believed us. Not really. The official report said we experienced visual distortion from silt and light refraction. Yeah, sure. But here's the part I haven't told anyone, not even Sean. When we came out of the water, I was missing 20 minutes of time. My dive watch said 11:46 when we started. When we surfaced, it read 12:08. But my last memory was glancing at it as we descended, 11:50. There was a gap, a void, like someone had reached in and plucked out a piece of my mind. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl, floating there, waiting. And every time I looked longer, her face changed. And one moment it was blank. The next, her mouth was full of water and her eyes were leaking black liquid. 3 days later, the boy's body surfaced. Not near the lake, miles away in a culvert completely disconnected from the water system. No footprints, no vehicle tracks, just there. His lips were blue, his lungs full of lake water, but his skin, dry, bone dry. The coroner marked it as accidental drowning. We knew better. That's when I went back, alone. I told myself it was for closure, for answers. But part of me already knew I wouldn't find either. I parked by the edge of the drowned road and walked to the lip where the asphalt met water. The place was quiet, no wind, no birds, just the low hum of insects and the slow ripple of the lake. I looked down, and there she was, standing beneath the water's surface, perfectly still, staring up at me. Her dress swayed with the current, but her body didn't move, her eyes locked on mine. I should have left, but I couldn't. Something pulled at me, not physically, not like in the movies. It was gentler than that, like a whisper inside my head saying, "Come back, we remember you." And then I did something I can't explain. I stepped into the water. Clothes, boots, everything. It was like walking into cold smoke. My limbs went numb, but I kept going, each step sending up silt clouds that wrapped around my ankles like fingers. By the time the water was at my chest, the girl was closer. She opened her mouth and spoke without sound, but I heard it, not in my ears, in my bones. The road was not meant to be drowned. The toll must be paid. I turned and ran. Somehow got back to the shore, fell to my knees, and threw up lake water, though I'd never gone under. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Finally, I went to the local library and found a single reference in a folklore collection. The bridge used to be a passage site. Locals believed it was a threshold between this world and another. For generations, travelers left small offerings before crossing, flowers, coins, even bits of hair or teeth. It was superstition until they stopped doing it. Then people vanished, and when the dam flooded the area, the deaths stopped. But the dreams returned. And sometimes people feel called back, so now I leave offerings. Not flowers or coins, something personal, a torn page from my dive log. A locket from my mother's necklace, once, even a fingernail, every month. Because something is still under that water, something ancient, patient, watching from the drowned road. And I think I left a part of myself behind that day. So if you ever see a bridge that's been swallowed by a lake and you feel a pull, don't follow it, not unless you're ready to pay the toll. The Cursed Hollow Bridge. They say Hollow Bridge was cursed long before it was ever built. Back then, in the 1800s, it was just a footpath through a dense forest where hunters swore they saw strange lights and heard voices echoing through the trees. When the bridge was finally built in 1912, a creaking iron structure meant to connect the newly growing town of Braxton to the old mining camps. It was supposed to be a symbol of progress, but it quickly became something else entirely. My name is Jenna. I'm a journalist by trade, and like most people who've grown up in Braxton, I was warned to stay away from Hollow Bridge after dark. My parents told me it wasn't safe, and if I ever found myself driving that route at night, I was to take the long way around, no matter how late it was. I listened until recently when I returned home after a decade away, only to find myself drawn back to the place I had learned to fear. What started as research for a local Halloween feature turned into something I'll never be able to forget. The town's archives were filled with half-remembered tales and scattered police reports about the bridge. People going missing, cars found abandoned, engine running, doors open, whispers heard through the fog, lights seen dancing beneath the structure when no one was there. A man named Daniel Wexley disappeared in 1963. Teenagers dared each other to walk across it in the 80s. In 2004, a mother and her daughter crashed near the entrance and were never found. All these accounts had one thing in common. They happened at night during fog, and all of them described a voice calling their name, softly, coaxingly, from somewhere deep within the mist. So one evening in late October, I drove there. I brought a recorder, a flashlight, and my skepticism. The night was already damp and cool, the moon a dull smudge in the sky. Hollow Bridge stood before me, rusty and sagging slightly, with warped wooden planks and graffiti-smeared beams. Trees flanked it on both sides like sentinels. I parked at the far end and stepped out. The air was thick, not quite fog yet, but a heavy mist that clung to my coat and hair. I turned on my recorder and began narrating. Hollow Bridge, October 28th, no visible activity. Atmospheric conditions matched those reported in previous accounts. As I stepped onto the bridge, the boards groaned beneath my boots. I counted each step, 7, 10, 13. The center of the bridge always seemed to be the focus of every legend. And when I reached it, I stopped. That's when I heard it, the faintest sound of water dripping. There wasn't a river under the bridge anymore, just a dried creek bed filled with rocks and twisted roots. But the sound was unmistakable. Water. Then came the whisper. Jenna. My breath caught. I looked behind me. Nothing. Just the empty road and mist. I turned forward again. Still nothing. I clicked the flashlight on and swept it across the wooden beams, the old railings, the trees beyond. Then. Again. Jenna, come here. The voice was so soft it seemed to bypass my ears and settle in my mind. I raised the recorder to my lips, auditory hallucination possibly triggered by suggestion. But my hands were shaking. I stood still for what felt like minutes, straining to hear more. Then, without warning, the flashlight flickered and died. Darkness swallowed me. The air turned colder, sharper, and I swear the bridge dipped beneath me as if something had stepped onto it. I held my breath. A soft creak behind me. Then another. Footsteps. I turned quickly, only to see the mist thickening, rolling in unnaturally fast. And in the middle of it, a silhouette, not tall, almost child-sized. It stood there, unmoving. Then it lifted a hand and pointed at me. "Jenna," the voice whispered again. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. The bridge groaned under me with every step. I didn't dare look back. When I hit the end, I nearly collapsed on the gravel path beside my car. The mist didn't follow. It stopped at the edge of the bridge like a living thing unwilling to cross. I got in the car, locked the doors, and tried to start the engine. Nothing. It whined, clicked, but wouldn't turn over. I looked up, and the mist was growing. Now it stretched across the entire bridge, spilling out onto the road. A shadow moved within it. Then another. My hands trembled as I hit the recorder button. Still at Hollow Bridge. Witnessed something. Unclear. Electrical failure. Car won't start. Requesting assistance. As I said it, my phone lit up. A message appeared on the lock screen, but I hadn't touched it. "You belong to the bridge now." My breath hitched. I tried to power it off. Wouldn't respond. Tried to call out. No signal. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw a face. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Mouth open in an expression of silent, eternal screaming. It was behind me. I turned. Nothing there. When the engine finally started, I drove faster than I ever have in my life. I didn't stop until I reached the gas station 20 miles away. I rushed inside, trying to explain to the cashier what happened. He just looked at me, wide-eyed, and said, "You went to the bridge?" I nodded. He shook his head slowly. "You shouldn't have done that. You hear them once, they don't forget you." I never published the article. I deleted the audio files, burned the notepad I brought, but it didn't matter. The whisper followed me home. Sometimes, late at night, I hear my name spoken softly beneath the hum of my apartment's lights, or I'll wake up to find muddy footprints on the tile floor leading from the window to my bed. I haven't slept through the night in months. I moved once, switched phones, changed numbers. Still, they find me. Because once the bridge knows your name, you never really leave. The Toll Keeper. My name is Darren, and I don't scare easily. I've worked graveyard shifts as a night security guard for over 10 years. You see a lot of weird things, but nothing that ever made me question reality, until the night I drove across Crossfield Bridge. It's not a place most people talk about anymore. It's not marked on GPS, and the county removed all signage years ago. But it still shows up on older maps, like a scar that refuses to fade. Locals whisper about it in hushed tones, but no one really explains why. I found it by accident, or maybe it found me. I was driving back from a gig in a neighboring town, trying to beat a storm that had been chasing me for miles. The highway was closed for repairs, so I followed a detour through back roads, trusting the old map I kept in my glove box. That's how I ended up at the mouth of Crossfield Bridge. It was a single-lane steel truss bridge, rusted and skeletal, stretching across a river that looked more like a dark, bottomless trench. Trees grew unnaturally close to the road on both sides, leaning in like they were trying to stop anyone from entering. My headlights flickered as I slowed down. A wooden booth stood at the bridge entrance, like a toll booth, only older, weather-beaten and covered in moss. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there, but as I rolled forward, a light flicked on inside, and a man stepped out. He wore a dark green coat, buttoned to the throat. His face was thin, grayish, hollow-eyed, not a speck of color in his skin, no expression either, like a wax figure that had been left out in the sun too long. He raised one bony hand and gestured for me to stop. I rolled down my window. "Hey," I said cautiously, "is this road open?" He didn't respond at first, just stared at me with eyes that looked both ancient and empty. Then he spoke. "Toll for crossing." I laughed. "What, seriously? This isn't even on the map anymore." He didn't blink. "One toll. Pay it or don't cross." I glanced behind me. The road had vanished into darkness, the trees now so thick they looked like a wall. I looked forward again. The bridge loomed ahead, slick with rain and rust. I sighed. "All right, how much?" He tilted his head slowly. "The toll is not money." I frowned. "Then what is it?" He stepped closer and his voice dropped to a whisper. "A memory, one that means something." I blinked. "That's not funny." He held out his hand, palm up. "Pay and you may cross. Refuse and you go back the way you came." I hesitated, but something inside me shifted. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the overwhelming sense that turning around wasn't an option anymore. I thought of my sister, Sarah. She died 3 years ago in a car crash. There were moments we shared that I'd held onto like a lifeline, especially the one where we sat on the back porch watching fireflies the night before she left for college. That memory had kept me sane some nights. It was mine. I felt it rising in my chest, and without fully understanding how, I held out my hand and imagined giving it to him. The man's fingers curled over mine, cold and sharp. When he pulled back, something left me. I knew it instantly. A hole opened inside me, subtle but permanent. I couldn't picture the fireflies anymore. Couldn't remember what she said to me that night. It was gone, like someone had cut it clean from the reel of my life. He nodded once. "You may cross." The gate lifted with a groan. I drove forward slowly, the tires thudding against the old planks. The fog thickened as I reached the center of the bridge. That's when the whispers began. Soft at first, unintelligible, then clearer. Dozens of voices murmuring all at once. "He took it, he took mine. Don't forget." I looked around. Shapes moved in the fog, pacing along the outer beams. Human-like, but wrong. Thin, twitchy, like marionettes cut from tangled string. One of them pressed a face to the window. It was mine. I slammed on the gas. The bridge shook. The boards cracked. My radio turned on by itself, blasting static, then music from another time. Ragtime piano, echoing and warped. The steering wheel pulled to the left, like something was trying to drag the car off the edge. I fought it, gritting my teeth as I wrestled the vehicle to the other side. As soon as I crossed the final beam, the bridge fell silent. The fog vanished. I looked back. The bridge was gone. Just a gravel road leading into empty trees. I stopped the car, tried to call someone. No signal. My phone's date had changed. It said it was 3 days later. My hands were trembling, but I didn't know why. I couldn't remember what had happened on the bridge, not fully. Just flashes, whispers, a face. When I got home, I looked up Crossfield Bridge again. Nothing. No records, no maps, no news articles, like it had never existed. But things haven't been the same since. I forget things now. Important things, like the name of my high school or the song my mom used to hum when she cooked. Whole moments slip away while I'm awake. Blank spots in my day I can't explain. And sometimes late at night, I see the man in the green coat standing outside my window. He doesn't speak, just waits, like he's reminding me that the toll wasn't fully paid. I tried to draw my sister's face last week. I couldn't remember her eyes. Every night now, I dream of the bridge, always from the middle, always with someone whispering my name. I think it wants more, and deep down I know I'll cross it again, whether I want to or not.